Welcome, everybody. We are about to hop into episode 5/chapter 5 of our USG training workbook that pairs with our training manual. Now we're going to start diving into all things solar. This is the basic beginning of solar. We love for you guys to be educated in this just because you are probably going to be asked at some point, how does solar work? And it is actually crucial to know how your product works, especially when you're talking to individuals. So we love to educate you guys on this. I've always suggested to individuals to go do some research on your own. Before we had this, I would always tell individuals, go watch some YouTube videos. Actually, at the bottom of this, you will see a YouTube video linked. This is common knowledge across the board that you can have access to pretty much anywhere. When I first got into the industry, my goodness, I was looking at YouTube videos. I was printing off things that I could find that would educate me further in this industry. And so I found this extremely helpful to just understand how solar works. So like we have taught in the previous episodes, the desire to learn is going to be crucial here. This is where the desire to learn starts to take place because we want you guys to understand how solar works and things like that. So let's kind of dive on into this. This one's a fun little workbook to pair with. You get to pair these little terms that you'll see below to each step. I would suggest going through the training manual and then pairing and coming back to the training workbook, just like you would read a textbook and then do a little worksheet at the end. This is the exact same concept, only we further educate you guys with a paired video, and then we further educate you guys with paired links and videos and things like that, so you have an overall understanding from multiple resources. So let's kind of start with how solar panels work. I could honestly just read from here right directly now, but I'm not going to do that just because you can do that on your own. Solar works from pulling from the sun. That is literally like the most basic concept in the universe. It's solar panels, which comes from the sun. This has nothing to do with the actual terms below, but I'm just going to drop some information that I've learned through my years in the solar industry. A lot of individuals are going to say, if it is cloudy, do I still have sun power, or do I still receive solar from the sun? Yes, UV rays is going to still power your solar panels, I mean. So it's going to be the same concept. Look, we have maybe a little cloud over there. That guy's still going to get some solar power. If you have not already done so, pull out your USG training manual. That way we compare this together, get your notes, get anything that would be beneficial for you to expand your knowledge on this. But first, the most basic thing that I remember and like to teach to others is it's DC to AC. That's kind of how the currents roll. I used to think it was AC to DC just because, you know, the song and you want to pair it like that, but I remember it as it's not AC to DC, it's backwards, it's DC to AC, but what it does is it pulls from the sun, it comes through, and it converts the energy to usable energy, as you can see here. The sun has to be the energy from the sun has to be converted somehow, and you're going to hear this a lot with inverters. What type of inverters are we using? Things like that. This is where inverters come into play. There's going to be individual inverters for each panel. But what I want you guys to mostly take from this is it's DC to AC, as we see right here. I'm going to actually start drawing it. DC to AC. Where's our AC? And it starts from the sun. Whee! Goes into here, but these have to get converted to usable energy. And then it's going to pump through and be usable energy for our house. Right here, you would see your, I just circled it. Right there is where you're going to see your meter box. And when we do an install for solar, you're going to have your regular, all homes have this, but basically your, what would it be? The utility box that you have outside your house, that you have all the little switches and things like that. That's already set there. When we do a solar install, they get a whole new box that's just for solar, and it's typically right next to it. So that's where we're going to do the converting and things like that. So once it gets going through that, it's going to be usable energy for your home. Now, the number one question I get asked, and this is where net metering comes into play, and we'll actually break that down in the next chapter. But when solar is used, it's used in real time. Okay, so it's not. The only way it would be stored would be with batteries. So if you do not have a battery paired with your solar, you are going to be using energy in real time. There are going to be times where you're going to produce a surplus of energy. That energy actually goes back out into the grid, and this actually lowers the stress on the grid. This is why net metering was put into place a long time ago. I'm diving a little bit into net metering, but we're going to dive way into net metering in this next chapter, so stay tuned. But this is why net metering was actually put into place, was because the grids were getting really stressed out. When the grids get really stressed out, we see power outages, we see sparks in the grid, things like that, and it ultimately hinders the energy for the entire community. So solar is a huge benefit because what happens is it uses that surplus and pumps it back out into the neighbors, and that keeps the stress on the grid lower. This is a huge reason to go solar because you're taking care of yourself while also your neighbors. And this is where the surplus gets, we hear the word buyback program, things like that. This is where that would come to play because it's ticking and it's tracking. If I, yep, so here's the meter right here. This will be tracking the consumption and production, right? So we already have a meter on the side of the house, but this little meter right here without solar just tracks your consumption. When we install solar, we're going to also track your production of solar panels and things like that. And that's where we're going to see a buyback, things like that, because some individuals in some communities will offer a buyback program. When net metering first was in place, and net metering is literally just simply connecting to the grid, when we look at net metering, which was established in 2016, when this was first in place, a lot of utility providers incentivized going solar with this net metering buyback program, which basically would credit a homeowner whatever surplus they produced out into their neighbors, and they would receive that at the end of the month or whatever. Depending on each utility provider, it would vary. But that's where we would see that production and consumption right here is where we'd get all of our new solar appliances and things like that. Breaker Rex, that was the word I was looking for. But it goes back out into the grid. That's huge. So surplus going out in the grid. Let's do this little, please fill out the proper steps in order from the turn boxes below. Let's check it out. Yeah, so those are some fun facts about net metering. But like I said, when I first got into the industry, I was doing as much research as I possibly could to understand what I was doing and what I was talking about and working with these homeowners and these clients. I wanted to know everything. So this is a great way to learn everything. But let's start with step one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms / boxes. Our goal here is to place them in the right order. If you do have your training manual out, this will give you the answers, but why don't we give a little challenge and kind of put the training manual aside so that way you can kind of work through this and actually test yourself with this knowledge. So we've got 5 terms. The electrical grid is converted, sunlight activates the panels, the converted electricity powers your home, a net meter measures usage, the cells produce electrical current. Well, I think we're going to go with the first one. It all starts with the sun. Sunlight activates the panels. That's the first step. This is what we're talking about is solar. So obviously everything starts with the sun. Without the sun, we would not have solar panels. So the sunlight activates the panels. Now, it's very rare that a client or a homeowner will ask. Actually, it just depends. I've had lots of conversations about how solar works, and sometimes we'll get engineers or people who work in the electrical industry, and they love talking about this. So it's super fun to have an open conversation with individuals who are eager to learn this as well. So step 1, the sun. Step 2, Within each solar is a thin semiconductor wafer made from 2 layers of silicon. Let's see what the step 2 would be. What do you guys think the step 2 would be? I wish this was a open classroom, because this would be so fun to do with you guys right now. But for the sake of this lesson, step 2, what would be needed to produce solar? Let's see what our, so we've got, let's draw, we've got this one. We can kind of scratch that one out. Now we have the electrical grid is converted. The converted electricity powers your home. A net meter measures usage, and the cells produce an electrical current. Well, we know that it's not AC to DC like the song. It's the opposite of the song. So let's see here. I think something needs to be produced, right? So we got the sun. Now something needs to be produced, right? So I see the word produced here. So I think we're going to go with number 2. The cells produce an electrical current. So let's type that bad boy in. The cells produce electrical current. I love that one. We'll just drag that bad boy right there. Let's see if we have any word. Yep. Okay. Next, step 3. Oh, we got to scratch that one out. We have 3 more. So we got sun activates the panels. We got the cells produce electrical current, right? So it's pulling energy from the sun. It's producing an electrical current that we know as DC to AC. Ooh, well, I already just said it's DC to AC, so we can probably assume and be confident that we now have to convert DC, direct current, to alternating current. Alternating current is the usable current for a home. So let's be confident, and that's the word that we like right here is converted. We got activates, we got produced, now we've got converted. The converted electricity powers your home. Ooh, we got 2 converteds. Wow, so we've got 2 converteds right here. So the electrical grid is converted, or the converted electricity powers your home. Ooh, this is a tricky one. We are going to say the electrical grid is converted. That one will be first, and then it gets converted for your home. Yeah, so the electrical grid is converted. That one's going to be first. The electrical grid is converted. I want to put in parentheses DC to AC. Then we're going to say it's going to get converted again. See, look at that first line right there. Once the solar has been converted from DC to AC, what I'm looking at is right here. Once the solar has been converted to DC to AC, it runs through an electrical panel within your home. So that is when we talk about the home. So let's add a text here. Got the caps on. The converted electricity powers your home. And we want that AC as usable energy. We'll add that little note for y'all. Let's go back up. So we've got these two out. So that leaves us with a net meter measures usage. Last one. Net meter measures usage. And you guys already have a meter on your home, just like I said. A net meter measures usage. And then below we have, oh, and this is just what we were talking about. I just did a brief run through, or I just did a brief little read through of this. Your utility company will often provide credits for any surplus of power you send back into the grid. This is known as net metering, and this is actually leading into our next chapter. I love talking about net metering because it's just fascinating to me. But like I said, this was really big when this net metering program was in place in 2016. Now we're a couple years into it. You'll see some utility providers pulling back from that buyback program. They're still having incentives and things like that to go solar, but the buyback program is kind of dwindling. So it's important to make sure you do research on your utility provider within your community. Please see below the further details on Solar 101. We've got, this is going to be right here, a article, and then this one's going to be a video. So feel free to dive into this as much as you'd like. This was the basics of how solar works. It's a 4-step conversion, and that is Solar 101 on the basics. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next chapter.